It's a three-toed one, you know, right? Well, if you find that baby, there'll be nothing built ever in Attleboro.
Okay, great.
Nothing, baby, nothing. Ready.
Okay, I'd like to call Personnel and Human Services Committee to order at 7:03. Thanks, Frank. Tonight, we are going to, the only piece of business I have for the committee and for the council this evening is to introduce Nicholas Wiley to us and to the community, for those of us that don't know him. And we'll ask him, we won't ask him photosynthesis because he better know that, like I asked all the youth commission members, but I have to change my question for the youth commission because
They caught on.
Katie caught on.
Katie's good.
So, and we won't give you a fidget spinner either. Nick, if you don't mind coming up and introduce yourself to the council, tell us sort of, your background, where you came from, what you've been doing in your previous role with the city and now in your new role.
Well, my name is Nicholas Wiley, and as you know, I'm the new conservation agent for Attleboro. Graduated college, UMass Amherst in 2015 with a bachelor's degree in Earth Systems. My previous capacity here at the city was working as the assistant conservation agent. I started in April of 2016. Been loving it ever since. I took over filling in for my predecessor probably around last February when she went out on leave. So I've been acting as the conservation agent, doing those duties since then, and then became full-time in August. Lived in Attleboro my entire life. I truly enjoy working and living in this city. It's nice that I'm able to actually give back to the city now while, working in the field that, I got to study in and truly enjoy.
Okay. So any questions for Nick? Race. Should we go alphabetical order? Delicio.
Not even a question. I just want to say I think this is a fantastic appointment. I think, Nick, we've had the opportunity to work together on a couple different projects, but realistically, what sets you aside from, well, not sets you aside, but really where I think you're the most qualified is several residents have reached out to me after dealing with you and said you made the process easy, you were knowledgeable, you were able to really put their fears at ease, and even if they didn't get the answer they wanted, they at least understood why. So I think that's a critical trait. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm in full support.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Councilor Hall, did you have a question for?
I also have a comment, but I'll wait in line for it.
No, we're going alphabetically.
Oh, we are?
Oh, yes.
I also had some interactions.
They all went at the same
There you go,
time.
that's right. I also have had some interactions with Nick, and I'm going to tell you one of the, what I believe the best compliments you can get is you were standing at the window talking to me and Gary looked at you and looked at me and said, because you were already handling the situation, he said, Nick, you got this, and walked away. And to me, that is the best compliment that you can, not that he doesn't give a lot of, but that's a great compliment that Gary had that much faith in you to answer that question and to handle that situation. We handled it brilliantly, and the people that were involved were very happy to get the facts, and so I appreciate it.
Thanks, Julie.
Councilor Parika?
I don't mean to go on ad nauseum like my fellow counselors. However, I just wanted to say that I very much appreciate your attention to detail and your response. That we've had some interesting little points of business to manage, and you've always been, and I've texted you at 9 o'clock at night, and you respond to me immediately when I'm in, so I appreciate that, and I look forward to the things that you can do for the department. Thank you.
Oh, you're on. You're not. Alphabetical, I'm just kidding. Councilor Hagan.
Thank you. I will go on at nauseum if I want to. As you've worked with the council, you know sometimes councilors are very verbose. But I have a question. Since you've been taken over, is there a common thread or theme that you've seen in certain neighborhoods? If I'm allowed, I know this is about this position, but also because you've been in the position also is in different areas or wards that you've seen that you've had repeat calls to or interacting with certain neighborhoods or areas?
Certain neighborhood, I can't pinpoint any exactly. There are some, like typically the most calls I get is something like illegal dumping or someone cut down too many trees. As far as dumping, everyone has grass clippings that they want to dump somewhere. And usually that's just, they're not knowledgeable of the Wetlands Protection Act or of our local Wetlands Protection Ordinance. And people just don't know they can dump, next to a culvert or a, wetland area. Because sometimes what a lot of people is, when they think of wetlands, they think of standing water. Not all wetlands have standing water. It depends on the vegetation, depends on the soil content, and that's when a lot of people don't realize that they're dumping into a wetland. So typically I try to educate them as best as I can, point them to the local ordinances, point them to maybe some websites I can give some information. Typically what I have to do is I send out a lot of letters informing people of our regulations, and possible penalties that might come with those regulations. Typically when you get the letters, typically I don't get any phone calls after that. There are some times where it continues to go on, and that's when I have to press, harder with enforcement. But
Thanks. So I'm just going to add one other sort of, and Gary will know exactly who I'm talking about. So I was out and about in the city, and I met with, I happened to see one of our local builders, and he said to me, "Oh, I met the new," this was a while back, "I met the new conservation agent, and I'm so happy we got him. He reminds me of Ed Tanner." And I said, "Well, then that's great, right?" So you should be sort of happy to hear that the building community thought that way, feels that way about you, because Eddie was a great conservation agent, and those of us that worked with him loved him a lot. So he was a great guy. So that's excellent. Welcome, to this position, and you'll have a great staff to work with, and if you need anything, reach out to any of us. We'll be happy to help. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, great. Thank you, Nicholas.
thanks.
Thanks. That's all the business for Personnel and Human Service this evening, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, oops.
Thank you. We are adjourned 7:10.
Thank you. So ordinances? No.
Yes, you did. You didn't get this? No. Okay, let's go make a copy.
All right, I would like to call ordinances, elections, legislative matters to order at 7:10. I have three things I'd like to discuss tonight. First, Mrs. Jackson, the piece of business that you brought in last week, I'll be meeting with Diane Lennox Monday night to discuss, so I just want to give you that update.
Thank you so kindly.
My pleasure. As far as passive recreation goes, a couple things on that. I handed out the ordinance as it stands today, as well as what the proposed ordinance is. So if I can draw your attention to 16-20.1, what's added is the phrasing, "notwithstanding the foregoing passive recreation, as that term is defined in section 17-11.2 herein, shall also be allowed in the city's land surrounding Oars Pond and Manchester Reservoir, subject to the conditions and restrictions set forth in section 16-20.5 through 16-20.9 below." The other piece is 16-20.10, which talks about persons found to be in violation of this section 16-20 shall be liable to a fine of $75 for a first offense and a fine of $100 for the second and subsequent violations. Said penalties to be assessed in accordance with provisions for the non-criminal, it's been a long day, disposition of violations in General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 21D, or as criminal penalties under General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 20, as amended. I had some concerns raised by some people in the public, as well as some councils, asking what is the main differences. Here's really where the teeth in this is. This actually draws out two things, which is really saying we are officially allowing passive recreation and any fines that may be associated with not falling in accordance with any of the other sections in the ordinance. My original goal was to bring it out for a vote this evening, but I was asked by a council to hold it for a couple weeks due to a congruent piece of business, which is will be coming out shortly, and I think that it just makes sense to bring the two out together. So we're gonna hold it for another 2 weeks, and then we'll get it out in 2 weeks in front of everyone in the third week from tonight. Any questions, concerns, Council Blair, did I see you?
No, I just put my glasses on so I can see you.
There you go. You're not missing much up here, guy.
If I may, just.
Of course.
So I think that, because obviously you and I are working on those congruent pieces of business, which when it's time for my committee, we'll talk about that. But I've had people ask me what the difference is. It's obviously been highlighted, but it will allow people to walk their dogs.
Correct.
And, ride their bike and do all of those kinds of things. Because currently, as it stands, as the ordinance stands, that's illegal for people to be doing that.
Correct.
I have a couple other little concerns. However, I think that is a great way for the residents of the city to be able to patrol that area and be able to help manage any of the kinds of things that in the past have been going on out there that aren't really happening anymore. So I appreciate you holding off while we kind of negotiate some other things there, but thank you.
Yeah, of course. The other thing, you bring up a good point in terms of people walking and everything else. I think John Leppa will be glad to know he will no longer be a felon. So
Civil disobedience.
Civilly disobedient.
civilly disobedient. So, he'll be happy about that. Any other questions or concerns, Council Hall?
Yes, was there any language, and I know I was going to try to look up some for you, and I didn't do it, so I apologize, in
No, no
reference to
worries.
dog care in the, because I just see that as becoming the next
Yeah.
issue.
There's really not, but we have a couple extra weeks. If you want to present something, we can work it in committee in 2 weeks. We
Sorry
can
about
certainly have that discussion. Ms. Reynolds?
So I just want to clarify, it's basically saying that you can be on there without a fishing license now.
No,
That's
you'll still need the fishing license to fish. So you're
No,
gonna
no,
have
to
to
fish.
follow those rules.
for fishing, yes,
Yep.
but before it was just those people that had a fishing license actually could have been on that land. Now you're saying, this is what I'm trying to clarify, that if you don't have a fishing
Yep.
license and you just want to be out there walking, or walking your dog, or doing the pass, or biking, or whatever, you can. You don't need a fishing license to be on that property.
Yes. This removes any ambiguity in the way the ordinance is right now. So the ordinance currently doesn't say that you can't walk your dog back
No, it
there.
doesn't, no, it doesn't.
So
say
what
that.
this says is, well, yes, if you're walking your dog back there and you're not destroying the place and you're not lighting fires and, drinking alcohol back there, then you have every right to be back there. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that the fishing still is going to remain the
Needs
same.
their
But I
license.
understand what you were saying too. So usually the people who had the fishing licenses, they were able to use everything else.
Right.
Fully get that. This is removing any ambiguity, clearly spelling out what is allowed and what is not
Okay.
allowed. But I think that's a great point. President Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to respond to the question that Councilor Hall had asked relative to dogs and so forth. Some of the, in section 9-39 and 9-40, that area of the ordinance is where a lot of the things dealing with dogs in the city are found, and those would still be applicable here in terms of having to clean them after the dog, having to be on a leash, and all the rest of it. So a lot of those would apply, automatically. So unless there's some other concerns that this doesn't address, but rather than make it, if there are things that we're concerned about along that area, rather than put it into this ordinance, that really should go into chapter 9, where we have other things dealing with the ordinances. So you just might want to compare those at that point.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I also think, but staying in the same vein of the ambiguity and making crystal clear, we can always draw back to section 9 as other ordinances
Right.
do. We can put a blurb in there.
Yeah.
Right.
As
I like
defined in
that.
section 9, I think we can certainly do that as
Excellent.
well. So
That's
thank you for that, President.
Thank you. I think that does it.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Cool. All right, anything else on Manchester? Is that a,
Yes, that's a
yes,
bigger.
Council Pruitt.
So I guess, one of the things though, as we're moving forward with this particular piece of business, I think there's some ancillary concerns that would need to be addressed. If we're going to highlight section 9 with regards to animal waste, then I think that it would be appropriate. One of the concerns that people have is the disposal of trash, so I think that we would need to speak to the administration with regards to placing trash barrels back there and having some kinds of maintenance back there too, in the event that this will be something that's happening more often, or if people are going to be accessing Orrs Pond and Manchester Reservoir, having, I know like the Rhode Island beaches, they hand you a trash bag and you take your trash with you, and we can have, if that's what our policy is going to be, then we need to have that highlighted in appropriate signage or things like that, or, have one trash barrel at the entrances to Manchester Reservoir or things like that, so that those can be managed. But that isn't anything that needs to be necessarily spelled out in the ordinance, but it would
Right.
be something that I would have the expectation that we would speak to the administration
Well,
about.
I'll reach out to the administration between now and in 2 weeks from now. So, because I'd like, this has been going on for so long, decades. Let's button it up, let's move on. So, any of these concerns, like I asked 2 weeks ago, let's get them in, let's talk about them. Because, the worst thing maybe not the worst thing, but I'd hate to be in a situation where whoever's sitting here, 2-4 years, having the same conversation again. Let's button it up, let's move on. Council Hall, did I see your hand again? No? Okay, good. Any other questions on this piece of business? No, wonderful. And the last piece is just the door-to-door, the door-to-door ordinance. President Cook and I are working on finalizing everything, making sure that it falls into place within the ordinance book the way it needs to. I think we're just about there, and within the upcoming weeks, I will be calling for a public hearing on that, and then we'll be able to move on that as well. Okay? Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:19. Thank you.
I am gonna open up my committee just because I want to bring something to people's attention. So I'm going to call the Committee on Zoning and Land Use to order at 7:20. And, there is a lot going on, you can see here. This is just sort of an ongoing history, if you would, of what's going on with one of our first medicinal marijuana dispensaries. So we are continuing to do that. We do have a process in place. I've met with Gary, I've met with the solicitor, I met with the mayor, police chief, fire chief, Indian chief, all of those people, okay? So we do have a process in place, a very nice, solid process for how this works. Things I think have been working very, very well. If you look at the ordinance specifically spells out that there's 5 departments that are supposed to review these things and give me feedback, and indeed, those 5 departments are doing that. So rest assured that all that stuff that we're supposed to do is happening, okay? The one thing I did want to bring to your attention is the sign ordinance. And again, I know people bring up, please, if you have any questions, concerns, get them. This is going to be a really heavy lifting ordinance. There's a lot that's going on in there. And, if you did get a chance to read it, if you haven't got a chance to read it, please do read it. If you do have some concerns, let me know those concerns, and let's see if the folks that have been working very, very hard on this thing can answer those questions before we go into public hearing, because public hearing oftentimes brings additional things to deal with. So I would appreciate that. And we are going to have a public hearing on October 3rd to discuss that sign ordinance. And I think that's probably the most important thing that we've got coming up. Does anybody have any questions? The other thing is, I think I've already read this sign ordinance into record already. I'm probably not going to read it into again. It's very, very long, unless I talk to President Cook and he says, yeah, you better go ahead and do it. So please do read the ordinance. And we'll determine whether I've read it, because that'll probably take 10 minutes right there, reading the ordinance in place. So, and that's all I have for that. So I'd like to, there's no more business for zoning and land use. I'd like to close the meeting at 7:23.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Zoning and Land Uses Committee is closed. Thank you so much.
I'd like to call the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee to order at 7:23. Sitting on my committee is Councilor Cooper and Councilor Reynolds. And of course, we invite the participation of all other councilors. I have 2 matters to bring before you this evening, but before I do, there's quite a bit that we need to discuss before we can vote on the 2 motions, because it's all about money. I've been in many conversations with many individuals over the course of the past week as we've tried to execute my brilliant idea, turned out to be not so brilliant, to have the Capital Projects Administrator appear before the committee on a regular basis. Turns out that that's not going to happen. And you're probably not surprised to hear that. The duties of the Capital Projects Administrator include monitoring advertising bids, posting to central register, attending site visits, bid openings, and administering contract documents. And she works in compliance with bidding and procurement laws for all the Massachusetts general law that relate to the capital improvements program. But she met with the mayor, and the mayor said, no, that's not your job responsibility, so she won't be appearing before the committee. But it's okay. I did attend the school, the Attleboro Building Commission meeting of September 6th, and I watched through not only the building committee proceedings, but also the school building committee, and I'll bring you up to speed on where we are. At the last building commission meeting, the building commission approved 2 change orders.
Never mind, keep going. I'll get at the end.
One was on the Luther pumping station, which we're going to talk about tonight. And what they were discussing is that they found a 48-inch pipe was found to be leaking for several years. And they found that they could do a fabrication repair in place. So they put in a 5,000-pound quickcrete concrete patch fix, and that sealed the leak, and that took care of the problem, but it was a $22,000 expense to get a contractor to do that. And that required a change order. Additionally, on the second item, which was about the Pawtucket Water Department connection, Methuen contractors are involved in that, and along with a company called EZA. And they needed additional time. They needed 32 more days to work on their projects. So they approved a change order to fund that. School Building Commission was dealing with an updated floor plan and the issue of lockers. And the School Building Commission also was dealing with the presentation and design team. For the first time, the School Building Commission got to see architectural drawings of what that might feel like inside the building, which was pretty exciting. It's not finalized by any manners. There's still a lot of work to do before they get to the point where they're going to be sending out submissions for quotes. And I had a long conversation with Deb Gould, because I wanted to clarify with you in your minds and in the minds of the public what is going on with all these transfers in the water department and wastewater department, because there's a lot of them. And it's because Superintendent Kennedy, who is in charge of both the water and the wastewater department, is on the fast track. He is pouring through both systems and trying to establish a stable capital infrastructure before he retires. And so he has been racing through projects at a pace that we've not seen in the 6 years I've been capital improvements manager. And I applaud his energy and activity, because I think what he's accomplishing is really good. But in the last council meeting, we heard that the mayor was asking us for transfers to transfer a couple of leftover monies from projects, and that was a substantial sum. It was like $153,000. And I want to explain to the public that when we go out to bid on any capital improvement project, there's always a contingency that's attached to the bid just in case something goes wrong, and it's usually about 10%. And we, as councilors, expect at the end of the project that 10% will come back. If it doesn't, something went wrong, and we should know what that was. So in the new Municipal Modernization Act, all capital improvement projects over $50,000 have to have a public hearing. So that is now opening up to a larger fresh air and sunlight of what's going on in capital improvements, because from now on, as we go forward, anytime anybody wants to do anything in the city that's more than $50,000, there's going to be a public hearing. In the case of water, wastewater, there is a water enterprise fund, and there is a water retaining earnings, wastewater retained earnings. The difference between retained earnings and the enterprise fund is very substantial. What happens in the beginning of the year is that the water department, the wastewater department will be operating somewhere near the tune of $24 million to operate the two departments. And over the course of the year, they maintain a retained earnings of about $1.1 million to $1.4 million is about what I've seen. And we were distributed way back in, there's no date on it, but you probably remember receiving this on the water and wastewater department. At the time, the amount that was certified for the water enterprise retained earnings was 1.49 million, and what was certified for the wastewater was 1.065 million. And that's the money that's left over from the enterprise fund at the end of the year, certified by the state, just like they certify the assessments and they certify the treasurer's books and the collector's books. That money will probably rise this year, both from the 153,000 we were talking about last week, but it's not going to go over $2 million. No one thinks it's going to go over $2 million. And the retained earnings plays a very important role. It is almost an extension of the stabilization fund. So those taxpayers that are concerned that our stabilization fund is probably inadequate for a big disaster should rest assured that there's another $2 million in the water and wastewater department for any emergency in either the water or the wastewater department, which is where, other than something that like happened to Puerto Rico, we're most likely to experience a sudden expenditure. Wastewater, the age of our system, water department, the age of our system.
Thank you, excuse me.
So this year, we're submitting on October 10th the submission for the certification of funds. We think that it's probably going to be, there's about $629,000 that wasn't used in wastewater that'll flow over into the 1.65. So the summation of what I'm telling you is that on the motions that I'm about to give you, that it's okay for the money to fall back into the equity of the water enterprise fund, because I asked the controller to specifically look into what's called an informational release from the Department of Revenue on what we can do with money that's left over from projects. And they're very specific about what you can do and what you can't do, depending on what the project was when it started. And I'll make copies of these memos if you want them, but I'm not going to waste any more time talking about it. Just get to the motions and get through it. So, from the docket of October 3rd, 2017, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer the remaining balance of $15,449.92 in Fund 3212 Rutledge Drive Lift Station from account 3212-599-000 Rutledge Drive Lift Station, other financing uses, to account 60004-499000 Wastewater Enterprise Fund, other financing sources. This transaction will close the Rutledge Drive Lift Station Fund and will increase the equity in the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. Thank you, Councilor Reynolds. So here is the example of where we had a bid on the Rutledge Drive lift station, and I have the memo here on what that was initially. The vote was for $99,000 in the beginning. And so that 15,000 looks like it's just about the contingency fund and maybe a little bit more. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. From the docket of October 3rd, 2017, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer the remaining balance of $74,169.87 in Fund 3216 Brownell Street Sewers from account 3216-599000 Brownell Street Sewers, other financing uses, to account 60004-499000 Wastewater Enterprise Fund, other financing sources. This transaction will close the Brownell Street Sewers Fund and will increase the equity in the Water Enterprise Fund.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Reynolds. So, this is $74,000 on a project that was originally $125,000. And that is substantially more than a contingency because we were able to get the job done well. So the money can't get transferred into the retained earnings fund. It has to go back into the Water Enterprise Fund, which is good because that helps keep the water rate down. So for the taxpayers, the message is that we went out to bid to get something done. It didn't cost, in both cases, it didn't cost us as much as we thought it would. And we didn't run into any unexpected, and the result is that $90,000 is going back in the enterprise fund, which should have a pleasant effect on keeping the water rate down. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Pepper.
Just a comment, that's sort of, in my mind, extra good, because we did use 200,000 from retained earnings to fund this year's budget in order to maintain the same rate.
Right.
Right, so my hope is that we don't have to use as much money from retained earnings to fund the rate with things like this happening and Paul finding these other sources of revenue to either the retained earnings or the fund. So it's,
Well, you'll
keep looking.
Yes, so you recall that we just finished a big project at the West Wells, the water wells at the Wading River. That was a big project. That was $4,900,000. And that that had an authorized unissued debt in the amount of $666,000. The numbers are just staggering when you get involved in water and wastewater. But that project had completed, there was $268,000 there that went into Water Enterprise Fund. So, in addition to that, we had the Hoppin Hill Dam project. I mean, this has been a busy
Right.
season. So, the biofilters was another one, and it's all here. I've got it all here. So if anyone wants the backup for it, it's all here. But you're right. It's positive news that I don't want people to think that we're sandbagging the bidding, and intentionally borrowing money to put back in retained earnings. That's not the case. It's just that we haven't hit the problems we thought we would. In one case, some of the dollars that we had left over are flowing over to the Mass DOT project over by Interstate 95, where they're doing the work. I forget the name of that street.
North Avenue.
Yeah, North Avenue. And it's good that money can flow over there to get that done. Needless to say, everything's being tracked. Any further questions? Good. Motion's in order, all in favor? Aye. That completes the business at the Capital Improvements and City Development. Oh, I do want to mention that October 3rd, to the public, we will be having a public hearing on the Capital Improvements Plan. This is an opportunity for members of the public to come in front of the council and state their opinion about all the things that the city is planning on improving in 2018 through 2022. This capital improvements program was delivered to the council late this year, so we weren't able to review it before the budget. And as such, the charter intent of this plan is somewhat lost this year, but the good news is that we'll certainly have it by February 1st deadline next year. And that concludes the business that we have. I'm intending a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. All in favor? Aye. I declare the committee adjourned at 7:38. Thank you for your rapt attention.
If it's all right with my fellow counselors, I'm going to manage licensing first before we speak about traffic and transportation. So I call the committee on licenses to order at 7:38. President Cook, you'll be my third.
Right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
From the docket of October 3rd, I have two motions. From the docket of October 3rd, 2017, I entertain a motion to approve the request from Dick Oliver, Commander of Post 312, South Attleboro, Post number 312, 437 Newport Avenue, South Attleboro, Massachusetts, for permission to hold the annual Poppy Day on Saturday, November 4th, 2017, from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. with a rain date of November 8th, 2017.
Second.
Thank you very much, President Cook.
You're welcome.
We have the backup documentation. It's something that we do on a regular basis, that the commanders do on a regular basis, and we wish them the best of luck and hope it doesn't rain. We can have the Poppy Drive on Hadley's birthday. Any questions or concerns? I'll move for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. From the docket of September 5th, 2017, I entertain a motion to approve the application for keeping a stand in a public place and an application to serve alcoholic beverages or wine on city property by Sangria's, 59 Park Street, Attleboro, Mass, from 12 p.m. to 1 a.m., Monday through Sunday.
Second.
Thank you, President Cook.
You're welcome.
So it's interesting. I'm 100. I hope that you'll support Sangria's and having their stand outside. It's lovely to drive through on a Friday evening or a Saturday evening or in the middle of a day on a Friday to see someone outside having lunch. I can't help but remember way back when they first applied, and you know, I was not on council at that time, but what an ungodly mess that was. Remember? So I'm so pleased to see that there have never been any instances of disrespect to the community. You know, we've never had any police assistance necessary over there, and all the servers are tip certified. Everyone knows how to manage their customer base, and I'm happy to support this for them. Any questions or concerns? I'll move for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We're coming up on October, and as Vice President Denley has moved along to New Hampshire, I am now the chairperson for licensing. So everyone, just have a little bit of patience with me while I learn how to do this. We have all of the new Class 2 renewals that'll be coming in October. So that'll be fun for all of us. So just as I said, just have a small amount of patience with me. I call for an adjournment at 7:41.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 7:41. Thank you very much. And I call Transportation and Traffic Committee to order at 7:41. Councilor Reynolds, President Cook will be my third. Vice President Denley leaving has left me single-handed. So I have a couple of things to discuss with you tonight. I do have one motion that I would like to move forward on for this evening. From the docket of September 5th, 2015, I entertain a motion to drop the following ordinance. Ordinance relative to time-limited parking. Be it ordained by the Municipal Council of the City of Attleboro as follows. That Section 10-5.3A, time limited on designated places, Chapter 10, motor vehicles and parking, of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro be hereby amended by adding the following in proper alphabetical order. Eldridge Street, northerly side, from County Street to Dennis Street.
Second.
Thank you. So actually, there's two parts to this. There's two parts to this motion as well, so. Also, additionally, Eldridge Street, southerly side, for a distance of 40 feet from the intersection with County Street.
Second.
Thank you very much. We held a public hearing about a few weeks back with regards to this. Counselor Cooper and I brought in new business at the end of in August. I think we brought it in August and held a public hearing. Nobody came to speak in opposition. Nobody came to speak for it. Eldridge Street is that small, as a pleasant reminder, it's that small side street between County Street to Dennis Street that gets you into Capron Park. We've had a renovation of the condos over in that location, and people are parking on both sides of the road. I'm sure that Mr. Cooper would like to share his story in a moment. I did meet with the police chief and with the fire chief. They registered their concerns of their ability to be able to get, rescue equipment up Eldridge Street to get into the backside of Capron Park, where we use Capron Park for the expo and different things like that. That is a way for us to get in there in the event of an emergency. I did hand deliver all of you a copy of the email that Chief LaChance sent to me requesting the extension. Every intersection in the city, there is a 20-foot setback. You'll see the no parking here to corner. He made the request that we increase that to 40 to help with the swing of his vehicles to get into Eldridge. I've had many complaints actually on that street just because of the sight lines for that, so that'll help anybody that's utilizing Eldridge. Through discussions and a recommendation from the Traffic Study Commission, they recommended that we restrict parking on the northerly side, which if you're coming up Eldridge from County, it's your right-hand side, or Tony Viveros' side of Eldridge Street. And then there will be parking allowed in front of the condo, and there is no time restriction on that either. So it's my hope that you'll support this. I think it'll provide a safer way for the emergency response to get through there, and it's super congested and we can only have one car coming at a time. So, Mr. Cooper, would you like to add any comments?
So, yes, thank you for adding that. In fact, the night of the transportation meeting, I went that way home and I took a picture for the group because when I came down the street, there was a U-Haul parked on one side and a U-Haul parked on the other. I had to fold my mirrors in to get down the street. Which was, enlightening to some of the members on the commission. So, and you all know that I lived on the corner there, and it is the second means of egress into and out of the park. And I think this is a win-win-win compromise for the area, and we'll see how it goes. So thank you for working and getting it done. Thanks.
My pleasure, Mr. Cooper. Where we did not have, I have the expectation once those signs go up, our phones are going to start to ring. The individuals in that area that live in that area were notified of the public hearing, but the second those signs go up, and all of a sudden they can't park on that far side of the road, our phone is going to start to ring, and we'll have to manage that as we move along. And of course, they're called the revised ordinances of the city of Attleboro for a reason. We change them all the time, so we'll see how it goes. I would also like to, when we bring it in front of the full council, I would like to make it effective upon passage. We can make an amendment to that in front of the full council. I will move for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We also had a public hearing regarding the installation of 2 stop signs on O'Donnell Drive. Through my error, we currently have yield signs that are in the ordinance book that we need to have a public hearing to have them taken out before we can put the other ones in. So that was my error, and so we will be discussing the stop signs again. The public hearing will remain, and the results from the public hearing, we did have a constituent come in. We had a petition that was submitted to us for that. I'm pretty confident that we have a lot of support for it, but I skipped a step, so I need to go back and take that other step. All right, buckle up, people. I wanted to have a conversation with all of you here regarding Beagle Club Road. The congruent, is that the word we're
Yes.
using tonight? Okay. The congruent business between passing passive recreation at Orrs Pond and Manchester Reservoir will have a definite impact on the individuals and families that live down at Beagle Club Road. Last week when we had a conversation, or 2 weeks ago when we had a conversation about Beagle Club Road, we had some concerns. Some concerns were raised to me about the legality of us being able to implement. We're Jay and Councilor Delisio and I, and we're all trying to work on a reasonable solution. This has been going on for the better part of 40 years, and we are all very familiar with what has been going on down in Beagle Club Road. I'm happy to report that last summer and this past summer, it's like a new place to live down there for the residents. The enforcement that the police department has showed, they've gone above and beyond, and they've done a really phenomenal job. Individuals are still utilizing, passive recreation down there. They're just not parking on the street. We had a public forum where people are very concerned about their ability to access Manchester Reservoir, and this is a circumstance where first of all, it'll never be 100% perfect. Can't make it 100% perfect. And the other part of it too is not everyone's going to be happy, and we're going to have to learn how to live with it. So I have a couple of thoughts with how to manage Beagle Club Road. Mr. Delisio and I also met with the residents on Beagle Club Road to get their feedback. In addition to it's been wonderful. What they would like to see moving forward. I had a discussion with the police chief with regards to a seasonal parking ban in that location. Over the course of from the second I got on council, Beagle Club Road was up in my face the whole time. So it's something we've been working on for a while. I've been involved in sometimes sporadically, but here I still am. And we've had the ability to build up some trust in the residents down there, but they had 15 years of abuse. And it takes a little bit of time to get over that. When we passed the ordinance that I read last week, that we would have a review at this time of year, and that we have the sundown clause for January 1st. We're kind of under the residents in that area don't want to have this going on forever. They would like a reasonable solution. I think it's important for this body to be able to manage this prior to January 1st, because if January 1st goes by, then it reverts back to whatever the parking was previous to that, and I don't think that we want to do that. We're trying to think creatively on how to manage this, and I did have a nice conversation with the police chief I'm sorry, I'm a little scattered, my apologies. Through the course of the 4 years, a lot of the response has been like, it's a seasonal thing, it's 10 weeks, it's during the summer months that it's the worst. And I can't help but continue to recognize that the residents in that area have sacrificed an awful lot to find peace in their neighborhood. If you're having a party at your house, people can park in front of your house. They can't. And I'm trying to figure out a way on we are trying to figure out a way to give them some of that freedom in their neighborhood back. So we did speak to them about a seasonal parking ban where we could take it from, say, May 15th to September 15th. The dates are kind of they're movable. After a conversation that I had yesterday, it's usually when April weather starts turning, people really want to get out. That's the time where they're busy, and when the kids go back to school, it's less busy. So we have some wiggle room in that. There was a question on whether or not that would even be legal for us to be able to do that. I met with the city solicitor last week. She has no reservations whatsoever on whether or not that would be something that we'd be able to implement. I would really like your feedback. I know that we've had individuals who utilize passive recreation to go fishing and things like that who have been very vocal about their ability to access from Manchester Reservoir. They still have the ability to access this. They just have to walk like a quarter of a mile currently. The residents are kind of white knuckling it. Truthfully, they don't want to go back to the way it was. I've tried to reassure them that nobody here wants that area to go back to the way that it was. I think that we have, that we're building up trust with them, but I don't know if we have enough trust just yet. So they've issued to me their concerns about having a seasonal. Most of the residents would like to keep it the way it is. I'm not sure if that would fly here on the council. So I would like to hear some of your feedback, if you've had conversations with people or any of that, before I try and introduce new business, to manage this prior to the expiration. I might not be here January 1st, so I'd like to try and get this solved for them, or as reasonably solved as we can possibly do it. So if you'd like to have, I'd love to open it up right now to have some discussion. If you want to email me, however you'd like to do it is fine. Ms. Hegney.
First of all, thank you for having the discussion for both of the congruent issues, but this is a precarious in itself because it's something that is a ward issue. But then on the flip side of it, and as a ward counselor, I do respect, and I've said that before when I asked for something as a ward counselor, it also goes to that other ward that we may be talking about holistically, citywide, where now my residents of wards, I don't want to say my residents, the residents throughout the city are utilizing a piece of property that is in Ward 2. And this is the precarious, which I know you're trying to solve. So that's where my going back and forth is, where even in the past, I've had an at-large counselor bring in kind of a parking ban within Ward 6, and it was kind of a contentious issue a couple of years ago. And I'm trying to be cognizant of the Ward 2 and those residents as it relates, but also my residents of, and I don't want to say my residents.
They are your residents. They're all our residents.
The residents of Ward 6 to be able to utilize the public street, but also be aware that the nuisance that has been going on, and I do have respect for the police chief. We may not always respect, just because we have the same last name doesn't mean we always agree, okay? But I do have respect for his position and his job. And I want to listen to everybody, especially the Ward 2 counselor, out of respect also. This is something that's a direct impact holistically city-wise, but especially Ward 2.
And my apologies, Mr. Cooper has been in the loop on all of this as well. I was just specifically referring to, as we're working on passive recreation, that makes the residents nervous because now it will be termed legal for people to be there. And how do we accommodate that? So, I have kept Mr. Cooper, we have the ability, we're not on any committees together, so I can talk to him. There's no open meeting law violation, but he's been kept in the loop on that as well. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. Heather, from what I remember, that public meeting that you had, they were talking about a possible parking lot being made. Is there any progress in that with, as far as the acting superintendent?
Truth be told, I haven't, not that I am aware of. I have not specifically asked Mr. Hill with regards to that. I hear, well, if we can't solve the parking issue, we're gonna end up putting in a parking lot or things like that, but I don't have, there hasn't been any concrete plan that's been presented to me. And I'm happy to reach out not only to Mr. Hill, but to the administration to see what their plans are with regards to that.
Acting Superintendent Paul Kennedy would be the one. Yes. I think,
okay.
yeah, that's what I would think.
I'm gonna make a little note on that one. Ms. Jackson, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Blair.
Commenting Kate's comment. I brought that up before about the limited parking down at the end. I personally think that it could be worked out so that there could remain no parking. The residents talked to me, said they don't want parking on the street. And they'll put up with the inconvenience of somebody visiting, having to park in their driveway, or I think they work together. If they got something going on, they sort of get together and, send 2 cars down to my yard. They really worked it out down there. I think there's a way to work out something down there with parking. Limit the time in a parking lot. Half dozen cars, up to 12 cars, whatever. Make them get a sticker at City Hall saying they're all right to park there. We have people on duty at the water department 24/7. You could go down and shut a gate at sunset, sundown, sun up, whenever. And if they're in there and the gate's shut, they get towed. They won't do it very often. To me, that would eliminate some of the parking over on Clifton Street. It certainly would take care of the neighbors' concerns down there as far as parking on the street. I think it's viable. I think that's an avenue that you should look into. And that would, I assume, come from the administration down to Mr. Kennedy, because it is water property. But I've passed that around before, and I don't think the neighbors would be against it if it was,
The neighbors are currently against that.
I don't think.
My apologies, Mr. Blair, but,
Well, let me finish, please.
well, I'm the
I
chairperson, so.
don't think they would be against it if it was put to them in the right way with the gate and the time, and it would keep the cars off the street down there, because they do get cars now. But those people that park there and use that land for some passive recreation, they're law-abiding people, other than parking when they're not supposed to park. But they don't cause a problem. I think if you've talked to the neighbors, the few cars they have parked down there have been courteous, they haven't blocked driveways, they haven't thrown trash. And they're legitimate people that are walking their dogs, or evidently, I haven't walked it, but it's supposedly a gorgeous place to walk, just to relax, so. Personally, I think we ought to look at some type of parking facility at that end, and even see up on Clifton Street. I've never walked that. Is there a possibility of putting some parking on that end?
Mr.
And
Cooper,
gated parking?
if I may, Mr. Cooper, I haven't, initially I got a few phone calls about Clifton Street. Have you had any response to individuals parking on Clifton Street recently?
No, not recently, I haven't, but I have had them. And then I'll come, after everybody's done, I'll comment on the whole shebang.
Excellent. But before we get to the whole shebang, is anyone else who would like to, Ms. Reynolds?
So I think we had a couple of meetings here where the general public came, the people that want to use it for passive recreation, and quite a few people came out, and a lot of, quite honestly, a lot of them live in Wood 1 and have been using that property for a very long time. And what I recall almost all of them saying is sun up and sundown. That's what I heard them say. Not totally to be restricted on the very best months of the entire year, you know, like from April till September. So, because that's what I'm hearing mostly in my ward, that's where I go with it, is that I think that it's a public way, it's a public street. Everybody in the city pays the same for their taxes and for the use of all the streets. I think we're, you know, I mean, I understand some of what's going on, but I do know, again, I know people that live down that way, and they're not really as distressed as some others. So I think that we need to look into the sun up and sundown, and possibly, you know, as Mr. Blair had stated, some type of parking lot down there. I do think that we have to look at that, because almost 60 people showed up at that hearing, and every one of them was open to the idea of, you know, the timing of it, not like from April to September, but sun up and sun down. That's what they were all taught. They could understand that. So I think those are some things that we really have to look at, and remember that this is a piece of property that is, you know, it's a citywide endeavor, and as much as it pains us, and we're not going to please everybody, as you said, we're not, we have to make, I think, a decision that encompasses the most people in the city, and everybody's going to give up something, but you know, there are a lot of people outside of that area that use that property and have for years, generations of people. So, I mean, I've been down there since I was a kid living in North Attleboro. And it is really pretty. I haven't been down there much because, you know, you had kids and you weren't down there, and, I know this sounds terrible, but I'd be at home doing the cleaning, and the father would take them down there, you know. So He probably saw more of it than I did, but I'm just saying it's a beautiful place, and I think we have to understand that we have to make it available, that people don't have to walk a half a mile to get there. That's my own personal opinion.
So interestingly, so it is currently, any of the parks in our, so the Manchester Reservoir is regulated by federal and Massachusetts and city ordinance. So any kind of recreational facility is open dawn to dusk, no matter what. I can reference back to when, Capron Park, people still like to walk their dogs in the evening, and the police are in there being like, you can't be here, and it's 4:30 because it's the middle of February, or January. And I just also think it's important for people to understand that people aren't prohibited from being in, currently, individuals with fishing license from the state of Massachusetts and issued through the city of Attleboro are able to be in Manchester Reservoir. There's nothing preventing them from being there. They just have to walk an extra quarter of a mile to get in there. So it's not that they don't have access, it's like parking at the mall during Christmas. Like, they have to park a little further away from the mall. So I appreciate all of those comments, and I think that those things are important. It has been my experience that when we talk about the installation of a parking lot, it instills fear in the residents in the neighborhood. I've tried to express to them that people can come in from the North Attleboro side, walk all the way over to your backyard, and have a bonfire and drink some beers and do whatever the heck they want back there, and that we need to have reasonable expectations of what is able to be controlled back there. It has been my experience in my conversation with the residents. We had, what was it, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Delisio? We sat for more than an hour with them, and the parking lot option is not one that they're particularly jazzed up about. It's that maintenance portion, like when you were speaking about passive recreation, it's about having trash barrels back there, and lights, and cameras, and video, and all of those kinds of things to make that area, it's not let's throw some asphalt down, it's an easy endeavor. It's pretty involved. It doesn't generate from my seat on that. I'm happy to give Mr. Kennedy a phone call and speak to the administration about these kinds of things, but I'm pretty confident in, last summer when the hammer came down, that these were conversations that the administration had back there. And I can't speak for the administration, but if we don't have a parking lot there right now, I can only imagine that it was something that he shied away for one reason or another. Mr. Cooper?
I think
My apologies, Mr. Conti.
I'm pleased with the progress that the council is making on this subject. I have committed the felony, and I've walked the Manchester Reservoir. It's an exhausting trip. It is. It's an exhausting trip. And I've discovered things in the Manchester Reservoir area that I never thought I would ever see in the city of Attleboro. Anthills the size of that podium. Unbelievable.
I know.
Unbelievable.
Scary.
Yeah, I'm all set
Lady
with seeing
slippers.
that.
A field of lady slippers. I never thought I would see that in Attleboro. A half-buried 1945 Willys Jeep. I didn't think I'd find that up there either. There's bold evidence of continued passive recreation evidence throughout the whole area. But in looking at the council and the performance of the council in trying to regulate this issue, come up with an ordinance to manage it in a law, I'm proud of the process that we've gone. For decades, the pendulum has swung quietly where there were some problems and no problems and problems and no problems. And then suddenly that pendulum took a big swing, and it went too far one way and it went too far the other way. And it needs to get back down to a small little swing. And I think we're getting there. I'm very pleased with the progress that we've made. I don't think I could have done any better than both you, Councilor Delisio and Councilor Parika, the job that you've done. My compliments to the two of you, because I don't think I could have managed it any better. I do think that as a body, the municipal council, by talking about this, by putting the sunset legislation on the original bill, and by bringing it up in September again, and to try to deal with the issue on this council before it becomes the next council's problem, is all very honorable, and it's right. It's the right thing to be doing, and I applaud you for taking it on, because I know, and we're about to hear, I think, some of the deeper issues that are behind it. It's been hell for the ward counselor, because it's a very hot issue. I've gotten calls, I'm an at-large counselor, and I'm getting calls, of people saying, Mr. Conti,
As am I.
sure, I'm sure you've gotten calls. I'm sure we've all gotten calls. And I think we're moving towards a resolution. I like the new passive recreation ordinance. I think we're responsible to come up with a neighborhood solution. And I think that, I've said this before, what the council does, the council can undo and redo. So if we don't get it right the first time, we'll get it right the second time. But it's going to be a molding of a solution, which other communities have done. So, for example, the Blue Hills Reservation is an enormous place to go out and hike and have passive recreation, but there's no neighborhood right next to it. But there are other communities who have passive recreation areas and neighborhoods abutting each other that maybe we could look at and see how they've handled the similar situations. I'm happy with what's going on, Counselor. I am. I'm pleased on the council performance on this issue. That we're not shying away from it, we're addressing it. And our goal is to address it before our term is up. Congratulations, I think that's a good idea.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Mr. DeLucio?
Trying to find the right place to start on this, but first of all, Ms. Conti, thank you for your words, because it's certainly been, I know it's been an albatross around Mr. Cooper's neck, around our necks. When you talk about Blue Hills, in March, I believe it was March, Mrs. Preeker and I spoke with the state delegation and about, what are some of the options we might have in terms of getting state or even federal money to really kind of help move that along a little bit. That's going to be a process if it's even something that's feasible. Parking lot, we've talked about a parking lot. I think ultimately, that's probably what will happen. My concern with the parking lot at this time is where we're at in the calendar year. We have until January 1st to get something going. The neighbors have been accommodating to requests that Mr. Cooper, Mrs. Preeker, and I have had. This hasn't been easy for them to deal with either, and I think the key to a good negotiation is both sides are walking away with something, not everything. And I think that's where we need to really start to approach and where we need to look at this from. So now you see why I thought it was important to hold back on the passive recreation. I think these need to come out, it seems to be the word of the night, but congruently.
We need a t-shirt made.
We should. But this is something that I think we need to move on, and we need to come to some semblance of a compromise. And I say we, meaning the council, the administration, the neighbors, and those who use Manchester Reservoir. We've all gotten calls. We've all been stopped at Stop and Shop on a Sunday. We've all heard it coming out. People want something. So we have to get to the point where we have something that's as palatable as it can be for everyone involved. So I do appreciate the manner in which you've handled this in terms of listening to the neighbors, setting clear expectations with the neighbors, setting clear expectations with us, and being able to navigate within the timeframe that we're in right now.
Thank you, Mr. DeLucio. I really am very concerned about the timeframe, because if we introduce new business to change the ordinance, we need to have a public hearing. Like, we are under, Mr. Cook's not here, but with the special elections and things like that, our regular meetings are kind of, we have three meetings we've lost. And so I'm very concerned about that. And the last thing that I would like is for us to get to January 1st and have everything revert back to the way it was. We're currently and still working to earn the trust of the neighborhood. I mean, and I strongly feel that they deserve to be able to utilize their neighborhood in a manner in which is appropriate for them and what they're comfortable with. And yep, they jockey cars all over the place. I don't want to have to do that. They shouldn't have to do that. If we have people that are coming from out of town that are causing problems in the middle of the cul-de-sac, that needs to be taken care of, and it has. And it's really, again, it's a matter of building back the trust of the residents that when problems arise, we will address them. So that's kind of where I come from on that, but I want, you know, our discussions here, the reason why we're having this discussion is because I don't want to introduce new business, hold a public hearing, get to the night where we take a vote and it gets blown out of the water for whatever reason, because that does a disservice. That's a disservice to us, and it's a certain disservice to the residents of Beagle Club Road and to the rest of the city. Sometimes, you know, we're all on our best behavior right now, but I've seen that happen. So I'm just concerned about maybe coming to some form of a compromise as we move forward so that we can, you know, we talk about timeframes. We need to vote this out because it has to be paid by the state or whatever. This is different. This is different than paying a bill. This is different than moving something else forward because we have to get it out because we have 90 days or even the budget, even the 45 days on the budget. This is really important, and I don't want to let, with all the work that we've done and the wonderful things that Mr. Conti has said, I don't want to let them down. So I need your help to help make this the best that it can be. Would you like, Ms. Hall?
Yes, I mean, I want to bring it up because I know I was got lots of phone calls from people that says, you know, why this street's special than our street? And I was an advocate for this community, okay, in terms of, and being able to explain, I thought, viably why this community was different and what was going on, and to try to explain to people how really, really bad things were. And I still am an advocate in terms of that. But I think that to keep in mind that that's the other side of what you're going to hear from people, which is going to be, you know, what about my street, you know? And so we really significantly have to be able to say, just what you're saying is that, you know, is there still a problem? We wanted to change behavior. Hopefully that's what's happened.
That's a great way to play. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's a great way to, like, we have changed the behavior through enforcement. We've changed the behavior in that neighborhood. My apologies for interrupting.
No, that's fine. And I understand the concerns. Believe me, I understand the concerns of what's going on. I actually went and read some of the reports that were on, and it was disgusting what was happening there. Nobody should live like that. But I'm just wondering at some point, can we get, and I think we're all hoping at some point that everybody in the city can use this area freely without some disruption. I think that's, unless I'm out of line, please tell me, but I think that's probably the goal we want to get to at time. And I think what you're saying is, when is that time? So I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting. I like the idea of a parking lot only because I started thinking about the recreation conservation lands that I see, and there's those little parking lots that people can park and then they can walk into the woods. I mean, I kind of like that idea. I don't know if that's viable here, but like you said, we're not going to throw in some asphalt in the next 3 months, you know. Right. And I do also understand the concerns that were brought up. The times that you're talking about restricting would be the prime times for everybody else too, unless we ice fishing is an option. I don't know, because water's moving. I'm sorry. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, it's the prime time for everybody else to use that area too. So, yeah, it's a tough one.
It is. It's very difficult, and I'm trying to be as open and honest and direct about it as we possibly can.
Right.
We are, as Mr. Cook likes to say, we're citizen legislators. Like, we're average people who are trying to help manage and make our community better. So we're doing the best that we can with what we have available to us. And so, you know, there's a lot of feelings and emotions. I think that the temperament at that location on Beagle Club Road, it's significantly less fiery than it was last year.
Right.
But they're also, like I said, holding on. They want to hold on to what they have, and they're scared. I can only imagine that there's potential that they're worried about letting it go and having it revert back. Which I can say to them 100 times over, it's not going to. But until the practical application of that happens, they're not going to understand that. And so we just have to.
And you did bring up a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned about Harvard Street and how similar these things were, even though they're different situations, but it has to also do with the trepidation that those individuals had, and were very adamant about that this was not going to work out, and lo and behold, it actually has worked out okay. So I think, like I said, you know, you guys have put so much, you or Al and Guy have put so much time into this. I mean, I feel when somebody goes and puts so much time into it, they're the experts on it. They come to us, they report to us. So, I really am going to value what you say and what you think is the right solution.
Thank you.
Okay.
I wish the right solution was just
Yeah.
easy and right there, but it's unfortunately
for
it's
now.
not. Mr. Delissio?
Thank you. Council Hall, I appreciate your comments, and you brought up a couple things. Yes, I have trepidation. I think we're starting to change behavior, and I think we need to stay on this path. But you also bring up a good point about the ice fishing. It's not really ice fishing, but people use that all year round. There are people who run out there all year round. There are people that walk their dogs out there all year round. People who fish as long as they can, as early as they can in the season. You're right. We're not going to find a perfect solution. And the reality of the matter, I had a boss years ago who used to use the expression, "We're looking for the cleanest shirt in the dirty clothes pile." Because, we're not going to please it. And that's the reality of it. We have to figure out what, as I said earlier, what is the most palatable for a city of this size as a whole.
Mr. Cooper?
I'm ready.
Go for it.
So the first thing I'm gonna say is, don't ice fish there. Because the water is pumped in there. It's not, so the pumps are always going, it's always moving. I grew up in North Attleboro, I used to go in there through the D'Addario's property, the cow farm on the other side of Mount Hope Street. I went through there on my motorcycle. So in snowmobiles. So don't go on the ice out there. It looks safe, but it's probably not. So that's first and foremost. I do think we are making progress here, and I do think that the win here is going to be about compromise. It's going to be about compromise in every sort of cohort of interested individuals, right? It's going to be about a compromise for the individuals that live on Beagle Club Road. It's going to be about compromise. Don't forget about the people on the other end of West Street. Don't forget about the people on Clifton Street when there's 11 or 13 cars parked on the bridge and people are walking over. I like Councilor Hall, I reviewed some of the police reports. They were sent to me, and I did see some video of some action out there that you wouldn't want your kids to see. And I don't think that there are many other neighborhoods that have experienced it to this level, finding needles, condoms, and beer. Although I do find beer cans in my driveway from time to time, so that's not really. But the other things that I can't say I've ever picked up in my driveway and I live on a pretty main drag in the city. So what was happening there was pretty disheartening, and I think to change the behavior, oftentimes you have to be somewhat radical, right? I find that with my kids. So sometimes you got to be a little stronger than you need to be in order to change the behavior, and then you can sort of lighten it up. And that's sort of what I see happening here, is that perhaps we go through this, we do the same thing we're going to allow access through passive recreation. They're two separate and distinct things. We're talking about passive recreation and we're talking about parking on Beagle Club Road. They're different. And the passive recreation, I think, will get support from this council, from what I've heard in the conversation, to be able to use that without the fishing license, to be able to go walk there, ride your bike, do the things that you want to do. Now, the parking on Beagle Club Road, I think that the parking lot, from the neighbors that I've talked to, nobody has said, please, Mark, get the bulldozer paid for and rip it up and put a parking lot in. I haven't heard that from anybody. And I think in my initial conversations with the mayor, he had some reservations about the ability to do it with conservation, limitations and that kind of thing. We should ask Nick this tonight. Off of Clifton Street, you all remember we were going to put, many years ago, a parking lot in there, and if you go on Google Earth and you look at it, you'll see a square box like this. It's now a vernal pool because we let it fill with water and we didn't pave it. So it is what it is. There is no ability to park over there other than on the street. So, Wagon Wheel Lane is another place we've all gotten calls from because we're just pushing it out. But we have to, again, be somewhat stricter than we would probably like to be in a residential neighborhood around parking. And what did you say earlier? The revised ordinances of the city of Attleboro for a reason?
Yes.
So I think that it's important to consider that. And, I too will you know, listen to and get feedback from the neighborhood, but also sort of take the recommendation that you make to the council when you finally land in a place to put some resolution to it. And again, the win is about compromise. And I think that that is what we all have to sort of consider going forward. It's never going to be perfect, and I think that's what you said when you first started. So, and again, I appreciate all your comments. I couldn't make it to the meeting, thanks to the MBTA. So, you know, I'm, you know, sorry I couldn't be there, but I have talked to a lot of the neighbors, you know, over the summer. And, you know, I can tell you that when we come on 95, I have a 9-year-old that likes to watch with the binoculars and tell me what's going on out there as we're coming down the highway to slow down to get off the exit ramp. And I can tell you we haven't seen anything. I think the other piece we need to remind the administration, and I have a meeting scheduled, is that there was a commitment to rip-wrap that beach that's been created there. And I think we need to make that happen, and I'll mention that tomorrow. You know, if you create the beach, they're gonna swim.
Right.
It's nice and sandy, and you even got a trash barrel there. So if you make it uncomfortable on the feet, perhaps they won't swim there anymore. You know, I think we've got to put, you know, it was rip-wrapped years ago, and just they've slowly moved it, and I'm sure they'll move it again. But we have to do something in that area to fix that problem as well. So again, thank you for your work on it, and I think we're getting there, and to win this is going to be about compromise. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you very much. I'm happy if anyone has any suggestions, recommendations, questions, concerns, anything, send me an email. It's important. This is a very important piece of business to me and to the city as a whole. It's one of those hot button issues that no matter where I go, people want to talk about it. It came September 1st and my phone's blown up. Did you take the signs down yet? Oh, no, we're not taking the signs down yet because that doesn't expire. And again, it's a matter of, you know, compromise. You know, the residents in that area, the rest of the city are not particularly kind to them. You know, I had a story told to me yesterday, just that there's a gentleman who was outside, he parked his, you know, car up on his lawn and they were shooting hoops, and this woman walks by, she goes, you can't park there. There's no parking. It was someone who was actually she was utilizing passive recreation and walking her dog and not parking down there. But there's this general feeling towards the residents that we need to get rid of that too. I mean, they had to, if it was my neighborhood, I would have acted in a similar, maybe not in some instances such as hostile, but I would have reacted in the same manner. And so now we just have to, you know, we have to help them understand that this is what's best for you guys, and we can change it. We can be, you know, we're super restrictive now. Now, you know, you're on a 6-week, you know, I think about it being grounded. Like, you're grounded for 6 weeks. All right, now we're going to drop it to 4, and then we can change it again. So, but please, if there's any other questions or concerns, please. Oh, I'm sorry, President Cook, I didn't see you.
If I may, just as a follow-up to the various comments, again, as with anything, politics has always been the art of compromise, you know, in which we all give something for the greater good of the public. The only thing, anything that you're sending by email, just be aware of the open meeting law, that you don't violate that process in sending emails back and forth with each other. You're all familiar with that, went through the training earlier in the term. So just keep that in mind, that we don't want to do something where we're violating open meeting law in the sending of, we're trying to be helpful to each other. So just make sure you check that out before you do that. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. All right, I think that's the longest Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting I've ever had. I call for an adjournment at 8:27.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:27. Thank you.
Shannon, you're up. Yeah. I'll move down the other side. Welcome.
We like to call the Budget and Appropriations at 8:27 p.m. We have a public hearing scheduled for 10/3/17, and that has to do with the Hoppin Hill Dam, and the project is completed, so that public hearing will be on 10/3/17, if any of the general public would like to come. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $13,663.63 from account 11241-000-578300, citywide reserve fund for transfer to cover the unanticipated cost of the new fire panel and emergency repairs to the HVAC system to the following accounts: $3,850 to account 16101-000-524011, library building maintenance, $9,813.63 to account 16101-000-524240, library equipment maintenance, $9,813.63 to account 16101-000-522440, library equipment maintenance.
Second.
Thank you. For this, it was an unanticipated cost that when they were taking, doing the upgrade over at the library, and I know Counselor, either Reynolds or Conti, I believe, had other the other project going on with the library that kind of correlates over to this. And if you want to speak more on that, I open the floor to you also. But as you noticed, this is the unanticipated cost, and I had gone over, and I even talked to some of the workers. It had gotten hot in there, and doing the stacks, putting the books back, and being in the library, just as we talked about Willett School, the library over there with the AC. It's inhumane, basically, not to have that AC system. So I don't know if you want to elaborate anymore. I will open the floor because it is kind of more also a capital improvements
The only thing,
aspect to it.
if I may, the only thing you haven't said is that currently the library roof is out to a design construct firm for review, evaluation, to develop a request for proposals for the repair. That's expected to be substantial, and everything above the ceiling of the library is being considered in that project. So, to the public, you need to understand that the problem is being addressed. It's much bigger problem than we initially thought, and that we are planning on getting proposals for a complete resolution of a new roof and new rooftop units to take care of that for a long time. One resident called me this week and asked if solar panels were going to be a part of that, and I thought, that's a great idea. I hadn't heard anything about that, but it'll come up as we go along. It's unfortunate that the rooftop units failed at a time when it's probably the most humid of the season, but that's what rooftop units do. That's when they fail. And I was talking to one library worker tonight who said that every morning he walks in there, he wonders, what am I doing? I'm going to leave a puddle everywhere I go. And I know that's a very uncomfortable circumstance to be in. But it's over tomorrow. Fall officially begins, the temperature's going to drop, and it's going to be more comfortable in there, and by the time it gets humid again, the problem will be resolved.
Thank you.
I really don't know anything more about it. I do know there's a lot of work being done right now.
Correct. And I did talk to the administration, the mayor particularly too, and we're looking at doing that bidding process and probably in the spring, getting everything to that point. And I just wanted to call upon you because you are the capital improvements chairman, and this is kind of an overlapping issue where even you had a lot of questions, and I know Councilor Delicio, everyone had questions when we had a guest. So, and when I was talking to the mayor today, there was that overlap, and that's why I did call on you. So thank you for always being prepared. Any other questions or comments? Because the last thing I will say is, if you have any questions, please, if you think of them after you walk out, Barry Lacasse is more than able and free to answer any questions, or give them to me. If you don't have time, I'll head off and get the answers for you before the next meeting. That's the only thing I do ask. If you have a question, don't wait till next Tuesday right before the vote. Please ask so we can vet. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Motion passes, and that is all the motions we have for budget and appropriations. I call for adjournment at 8:32. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, I'm gonna stay right here. I'd like to call to order City Property and Claims Committee at 8:33. I only have one motion on the docket, and it's from the docket of October 3rd, 2017. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro to accept the donation of an engineering plotter from Pear Corporation in Foxborough with an estimated value of $1,500 to the school department.
Second?
Is there anyone that wants to know what an engineering plotter is?
I can tell
You
you.
know what it, can you tell? Because I can tell you too, but is there anyone that doesn't know what it is?
I don't know.
It is actually a printer, and it does interpret commands from a computer that works with a CAD system. So it's usually used for engineering of businesses and industrial buildings and things like that.
You so channeled like your inner teacher just then.
I
And
did.
when you
I
asked
thought,
the
what
question,
is-
I couldn't even help myself. I raised my
What is an
hand.
engineering?
I know, no, Ms. Reynolds, I don't know.
So that is it. And if I hear any other concerns or questions, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that is good, and that is all I have for tonight's meeting, so I would call for an adjournment.
Second?
Thank you, and I will adjourn at 8:30.
Aye.
Oh, 34.
34, you're correct.
8:34. Just a little.
Wait, no, you're 34. I do digital.
I need the new, I miss my
I can't
clock.
see that far.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to call Public Works Committee to order at 8:34. I have two items of business this evening. Firstly, from the docket of October 3rd, 2017, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer the remaining balance of $42,846.72 in Fund 3218 Biofilters from account 3218-599-000 Biofilters Other Financing Uses, excuse me, to account 60004-499000 Wastewater Enterprise Fund, Other Financing Sources. This transaction will close the biofilter fund and will increase the equity in the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. Second. Thank you. So the biofilter project is complete. Initially, it was funded for $200,000, and I'm happy to say that tonight, between Mr. Conti and myself, a total of $132,466.51 has gone back into the wastewater retained earnings fund. Woo-hoo, we did pretty good
That was
tonight.
Wastewater Enterprise Fund.
Wastewater Enterprise Fund, excuse me. Yes, I just corrected
a big
myself.
difference.
Thank you. It's a huge difference. You just explained it all. So that's pretty cool to do that tonight. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $70 from account 6100-515050 Water Enterprise Fund Special Licenses to account 6100-578020 Water Enterprise Fund Bills from previous years to distribution for certification license for a water department employee from fiscal year 2017.
Second.
Thank you. This is contractual, so taking the $70 out. All those in favor? Motion passes. Lastly, I just wanted to remind the public that there will be a public hearing next Tuesday night with regards to relocation of a pole on Newport Avenue. That's to be held next Tuesday, October 3rd. And Ms. Hegney, I would appreciate if you would bring my motions forward since I will not be in attendance.
I will do that, Ms.
Thank you
Jackson.
ever so
Mrs.
kindly.
Jackson.
Thank you very much. I'll ask for an
Welcome.
adjournment for Public Works.
Second.
Second. Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:37.
Reporting for Public Safety and Emergency Management. I have two motions this evening. From the docket of October 3rd, 2017, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $5,670.60 from account 1100210-582510 General Fund Continued continuing appropriation police renovation to account 1100-599000, general fund, continuing appropriation, other finance and uses, and to further transfer from account 1100-599000, general fund, continuing appropriation, other finance and uses, to account 1000-4-499000, general fund, other finance sources, for the purpose of purchasing and installing toilets in the cells at the police department.
Second.
Pretty self-explanatory. We've got a prisoner that's got to go, he's got to go. And we've got to have the facilities for him. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Secondly, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $7,995 from account 11241-000-578300, citywide reserve fund for transfer, to account 12101-000-541010, police software, for funding to purchase a cell phone forensic software and hardware package for the police department.
Second.
This particular package is only offered to a certain number of people, towns rather, throughout the towns and cities throughout the country. Attleboro is one of those. It's a discounted price, and Chief Hegney says it will, or in his backup, that it will greatly enhance the ability of the police detectives in enforcing the laws of the city. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. I have no other business this evening for the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee. Move to adjourn at 8:04.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Just a reminder to put your minutes on the top basket on the admin person's desk,
We're all done.
okay?
It's just a committee meeting, so we're not in, but is there, I don't know if we break open meeting law or something. Is there anything that has to do with council? or-
Well, I'm new to the city council meetings. I've been attending some of them. Everybody has their own way of doing it, but I'm actually, I was here because I saw on the docket the recreational and marijuana medical, so I'm on the board of directors for Massachusetts Recreational Cannabis Reform Coalition, and I'm also an advisor to the Massachusetts.
Cool.
I
gotta step out. You know what?
That's one.
Yep, me.
Yeah, her.
I was like, just
Yeah, do I have to talk to
No,
you?
we're very welcoming and stuff, but we just
No.
gotta watch open meeting.
Yeah, and tonight was committee, you could have spoken in like,
Oh, really?
putting it a whole, but it was,
That's fine.